New Year's Eve. Scarlett Hayes shivered, freezing in her short skirt while hiking. I casually remarked, "Maybe don't wear a short skirt for hiking," and her eyes immediately welled up. My boyfriend, Ethan Blackwood, instantly frowned. "Scarlett, why do you have to be so cruel? You'll stay on the peak alone and reflect. You can come down when you've apologized to Chloe Davis." Our friends were stunned, trying to talk him out of it. He leaned against his car door, looking at me with absolute certainty. "You're too proud. It's time you learned a lesson." I looked at him and asked, "Are you sure?" He nodded, then drove off with Chloe. I stood on the peak for 5 minutes. Then I called my dad. "Dad, send a helicopter to pick me up." Then I called my assistant. "Also, close the mountain." Effective immediately, no one goes up or down. Half an hour later, the helicopter landed. Ethan's phone calls came flooding in, but I didn't answer. Finally, he sent a text message. Chloe collapsed from the cold. "Are you happy now?" I told my assistant. "Let them spend the rest of New Year's Eve up there before they come down." New Year's Eve for A.M. Skyridge Peak. The wind was fierce. I stood wrapped in my down jacket at the edge of the observation deck, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Chloe Davis stood beside me, shivering uncontrollably. She wore a short skirt with black stockings, topped with a thin-looking white cashmere coat. "Hiking really isn't suitable for short skirts," I casually remarked. It really was just a casual comment. The next second, her eyes welled up. "Scarlett, I didn't mean to dress like this. I thought it wouldn't be so cold on the mountain." Her voice trembled, as if I'd been the one to upset her. Before I could even speak, Ethan started blaming me. "Scarlett Hayes, it's her freedom to wear whatever she wants. Do you have to be so harsh?" "I was just reminding her," I said, looking at him, my voice calm. "Reminding?" Ethan sneered. "That tone of yours was a reminder." Chloe quickly pulled his sleeve. "Ethan, don't blame Scarlett. I'm sure she was just concerned about me. It's my fault for not dressing properly." As she spoke, tears streamed down her face. Ethan's expression grew even darker. He pulled a tissue from his pocket and handed it to Chloe, then turned to me. "Scarlett Hayes, why can't you ever be more gentle?" I didn't say anything. The friends around us exchanged glances. Someone tried to smooth things over. All right, let's not fight. The sunrise is almost here." "Yeah, Chloe, don't cry. Here, take my jacket." Someone took off their waterproof jacket and draped it over Chloe. Chloe wiped her tears and thanked them, looking as sweet and innocent as could be. I just stood there, feeling like the villain. Ethan didn't look at me again. He walked with Chloe to the other side of the observation deck, murmuring to comfort her, "Don't take it to heart. She's just like that, she speaks without thinking." 23 years I'd known him, and that's how he described me. The horizon in the distance began to lighten. Someone yelled sunrise, and a group of people gathered to take photos. I didn't move. I stood still, watching them huddle together. Chloe was protected in front of Ethan. She looked up at him and asked, "Ethan, isn't it beautiful?" Ethan looked down at her and smiled. "Beautiful." I couldn't tell if he meant the sunrise or her. Suddenly, I felt a little tired. The sunrise quickly ended. Everyone took photos on the observation deck, then discussed heading down for breakfast. Let's go. I'm freezing. There's a great diner at the bottom of the mountain. Let's grab some brunch." When we reached the cars, I found Ethan's car door locked. He leaned against the driver's side door, looking at me, his expression indifferent. "Scarlett Hayes, you stay here." I stopped. "What do you mean?" He raised his chin, gesturing toward the peak. "Go up there and be alone. When you've figured out what you did wrong, call me, and I'll come get you." Everyone around us was stunned. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "Stop messing around, get in the car." "Scarlett, you too." Ethan ignored them, just looking at me. His gaze was absolute, like he was watching a cat that couldn't escape. He knew I didn't have a car. He knew we were at the summit, and getting a ride was impossible. He knew I had no other choice but to give in to him. "Are you sure?" I asked him. "Sure," he said. "You're too proud. It's time you learned a lesson." I nodded. Then I turned and walked toward the peak. "Scarlett," someone called after me. I didn't look back. From behind me, I heard Ethan's voice. "Don't worry about her. She won't go far, she'll be back. She hates the cold." Then came the sound of car engines starting. The convoy drove off into the distance. I walked back to the observation deck and found a sheltered spot to sit. I called my dad. Half an hour later, a roar came from the sky. A black helicopter slowly descended. The sky was just beginning to lighten when the helicopter landed at the private helipad on the east side of the city. The car drove out of the helipad and through the still sleeping city streets. I leaned back in the seat, staring out the window, lost in thought. My phone was still off. 23 years. I knew Ethan too well. He'd get mad, I'd coax him. He'd push me away, I'd wait. He'd come back, I'd accept him. As if I was just supposed to stand there and wait for him. But this time, I didn't want to wait anymore. "Scarlett, we're here." I snapped out of it. The car had already stopped at my house. The house was warm. Maria was bustling in the kitchen and looked surprised to see me back. Scarlett? I thought you went to the peak to see the sunrise? Why are you back so early? It ended early. I took off my jacket and sat at the dining table. Maria, I'd love a bowl of soup. Coming right up, dear. It'll be ready in a jiffy. The steaming hot soup arrived. I took a bite, feeling the warmth spread through my stomach, making me feel a little better. Maria chattered beside me. Oh, you poor thing, it must have been freezing up on that mountain, weren't you? I've fine. Where's Ethan? Didn't he come back with you? I paused. He had something to do. Maria sighed and didn't press the issue. After eating, I went upstairs and took a shower. The hot water streamed over me, slowly washing away the chill from the mountain. After my shower, I wrapped myself in a robe and sat on the sofa. After some hesitation, I turned on my phone. As soon as it powered on, it started vibrating wildly. 99 missed calls, 99 unread messages. I opened the messages. Scarlett, where are you? The road down is blocked. They say the mountain's closed. Was this your doing? Stop messing around. Hurry up and get them to open the road. We've been freezing at the base of the mountain for almost an hour. Was that you, the helicopter? Did you take a helicopter? You're really going too far. Scarlett, please stop playing games, okay? It's really cold out here, Chloe shivering. Scarlett Hayes, you're absolutely out of line. Scarlett, I'm sorry, okay? Chloe collapsed. We took her to the clinic at the base of the mountain. Are you happy now? Seeing that, I raised an eyebrow. Collapsed? Such a princess? I didn't reply, just scrolled down. The last message was, I'm sorry. Ethan Blackwood would say sorry? In 23 years, he had never once said sorry to me. When he messed up, he'd always buy gifts, take me to dinner, try to cheer me up, but he never actually said sorry. I put my phone down and lay back on the sofa. Outside, fireworks were going off. I suddenly remembered my childhood. Ethan and I were both 7 or 8 back then, neighbors. Once he broke my favorite doll. My mom told him to apologize, and he just flushed beet red, then ran home. He emptied all the money from his piggy bank and brought it over to me. Here, buy a new one, he said. I asked him, aren't you going to apologize? He looked down and after a long moment mumbled, I paid you back. Eventually, I forgave him, not because of the money, but because he'd given me a whole year's worth of his allowance. Back then, I thought he wouldn't say sorry, but he'd show he cared in his own way. At 3 p.m., my phone rang again. Caller ID, Ethan Blackwood. On the 4th ring, I picked up. Scarlett. His voice was urgent. Where are you? I didn't speak. Scarlett, listen to me. This morning was my fault. I shouldn't have left you alone on the mountain. Ethan. I cut him off. He paused. How's Chloe? He was startled, then said, she got some fluids at the clinic, she's fine now. She's back home. Good. Scarlett, you. I'm home, I said. I'm fine, not cold, nothing happened. He fell silent. You told me to reflect, and I have, I said. You said I was too proud, that I needed to be taken down a peg. I thought about it all morning, and you're right, I am pretty proud. Scarlett, I didn't mean it like that. Then what did you mean? He fell silent again. Ethan, do you know what it feels like to be abandoned on a mountain on New Year's Eve? Did it ever occur to you? What if I hadn't had a helicopter to get down? What if I'd fallen on the mountain path? What if I'd gotten hypothermia? Scarlett, please stop. You didn't care, I said. You only cared if I'd given in. The phone line was quiet for a long time. Then I heard him say, I'm sorry. I said, I heard you. Where are you? I'm coming to find you. No need, I said. Go back and be with your family. Scarlett. Ethan, I paused. Do you know who owns this mountain? He was startled. What? Skyridge Peak. Hayes Industries acquired it 2 years ago. It's my property. So I don't need to beg you. After hanging up with Ethan, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling for a while. My phone vibrated again. Not him. It was Chloe. A Snapchat message. A really long one. Scarlett, I'm truly sorry about today. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have worn so little and made Ethan worry, and I shouldn't have cried and made you misunderstand. Ethan was actually really worried. He waited for you at the base of the mountain for so long. His hands were red with cold. You two have so much history. Please don't let a small misunderstanding mess things up, okay? Every sentence was an apology, but every sentence was also defending Ethan. If she sent that to Ethan, he'd probably think Chloe was so understanding and kind. But to me, I just found it laughable. He replied succinctly, Okowo. Then I put my phone down and rolled over to sleep. I slept until 6 in the evening. I got up, changed my clothes, and went downstairs. My mom was drinking tea. Well, hello, sleepyhead, you're up? My mom glanced at me. I heard you came back by helicopter this morning. What? The mountain wasn't fun. It was all right. I said, sitting on the sofa. Just a bit cold. It's winter, going to the peak for sunrise, of course it's cold. My mom handed me a hot mug of tea. Where's Ethan? Didn't he come back with you? He's busy. My mom looked at me, but didn't press the issue. At 7 p.m., during dinner, my dad asked me, how's Skyridge Peak? Is the management still up to par? It's good, I said. But I closed the mountain. My dad paused. Closed the mountain? Yeah. He looked at me, didn't ask why, just nodded. All right, it's your property, you call the shots. My mom chimed in. Closed the mountain? Why? Aren't there still people up there? A few, I said. Let them stay up there for another day or two. My mom was startled, then chuckled. You, my dear, are starting to sound more and more like your father. My dad smiled too, but didn't reply. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. Hello, Ms. Hayes? This is Chris, the administrator at Skyridge Peak. His voice was urgent on the other end, mixed with the sound of wind. Yes, that's me. What's wrong? Ms. Hayes, there's a man at the base of the mountain. He's been waiting there since this afternoon, says he needs to go up and find someone. We stopped him. He's at the main gate now, and he won't leave no matter what we say. What's his name? He said his name is Ethan Blackwood. I was silent for 2 seconds. Let him wait. Huh. I said let him wait. I'll call you back in a bit. Later that night, before bed, I picked up my phone, walked out onto the balcony, and called Chris. Is he still there? Yes. He hasn't moved. We told him to come warm up in the guardhouse, but he won't. He's just standing at the main gate. His face is pale from the cold. Is he alone? Yes, just him. I looked at the fireworks in the distance, silent for a few seconds. Put him on the phone. Footsteps sounded on the other end, then Chris's voice. Mr. Blackwood, it's Scarlett. Then Ethan's voice, a little hoarse. Scarlett. Scarlett, I'm at the base of the mountain. I know. I just want to talk to you face to face. About what? He paused. To say you're sorry? I asked. To say you won't do this again? To say you actually care about me? He didn't speak. Ethan, I said softly. How many times have you said those things before? Which time was real? This time it's real. His voice was rushed. Scarlett, this time I truly understand I messed up. This morning, I didn't mean to leave you on the mountain, I just lost my temper for a moment. I thought you were speaking too harshly, and I wanted you to cool down. So you just left me alone on the peak? He fell silent. Ethan, when you were 25, you also left me alone in a mall once. Remember? The silence over the phone line was heavy, broken only by the static of the mountain whined through the administrator's receiver. Ethan, I said, my voice steady against the cold draft from the balcony. When we were 25, you left me at the Glatzentrum Mall in Zurich. It was raining, the temperature was below freezing, and you took the only rental car. Keys because your junior colleague, Sarah, had lost her passport at her hotel. On the other end of the line, his breathing hitched. Scarlett, that was 3 years ago. Sarah was panicked. She was new to the firm. I had 3 heavy luggage bags. I continued, my tone flat, devoid of anger. The battery on my phone was at 4%. I waited in the loading bay for 3 hours because the local taxi service was backed up due to the sleet. When you finally returned, you didn't ask if I was cold. You just said, Sarah's safe, that's what matters. I apologize for that, he muttered, his voice sounding dry, muffled by the scarf he was likely burying his face in at the Skyridge gate. I've apologized for that 100 times. No, I replied. You bought me a pair of leather gloves from Hermes the next day. You didn't apologize. You never do. You think an expense report is an emotional transaction. Scarlett, please, he said, and for the first time in 23 years I heard his teeth chattering. It's freezing down here. The wind is coming off the North Ridge. Just tell the guards to let me up, or come down. We can sit in the car. We can talk like civilized people. The mountain is closed, Ethan, I said, looking down at my clean manicured nails. It's private property. The administrator is just doing his job. Go home. I'm not leaving until you look me in the eye and tell me we're over. We're over, I said. I didn't wait for his response. I hung up, tapped the screen to block his number, and then called Chris, the administrator, back. Ms. Hayes. Chris answered immediately. If Mr. Blackwood remains at the gate after midnight, call the local municipal patrol for loitering on private commercial land, I said. Do not give him tea. Do not give him a blanket. If your staff assists him, it will be considered a breach of company policy. Understood, Ms. Hayes, Chris said, his voice dropping into the professional, slightly terrified tone that people used when they realized they were speaking to my father's daughter. I walked back into my bedroom. The sheets were Egyptian cotton 300. Thread count, smelling faintly of lavender laundry detergent. I climbed in, pulled the heavy duvet over my shoulders, and fell asleep within 5 minutes. The next morning, the social circle we shared began to leak. I woke up at 8. The sun was pale, casting long, cold shadows across the mahogany floorboards of my bedroom. I made myself a cup of black coffee and sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through my tablet. Our mutual friend group had a chat on WeChat called the Peak Club. It had 12 members, mostly children of local real estate developers, shipping magnates, and steel executives who had gone to the same private preparatory schools. At 2:15 a.m., Chloe Davis had posted a photograph. It was a shot of her wrist, pale and thin, with a green plastic hospital band around it. In the background was the beige wall of the community clinic at the base of the mountain. The caption read, "So sorry to ruin everyone's New Year's Eve. I really didn't mean to be so fragile. Thank you to everyone who stayed with me in the cold." The comments below it were a study in social posturing. Julian real estate heir, take care Chloe. Some people just don't know when a joke goes too far. Lydia, shipping heiress, unbelievable. Leaving someone on a mountain in a short skirt? That's not teaching a lesson. That's just malicious. Get well soon, babe. Marcus, Ethan's cousin. Ethan's still at the gate. He's going to get sick too. This is ridiculous. I watched the screen for a moment, my coffee cooling in my hand. 4 or 5 years since Ethan and I had started dating after university, I had been the quiet anchor of this group. When Julian's father's company needed a bridge loan, it was my father who signed the papers after I asked him over breakfast. When Lydia wanted the exclusive distribution rights for the French wine label my family imported, I made the call. They had eaten my family's food, sailed on our yachts, and used our guest houses in Aspen. But the moment Chloe Davis arrived with her watery eyes and her cheap, calculated helplessness, they had all found their roles as knights errant. It was easier to defend a shivering girl in a short skirt than to respect a woman who owned the mountain they were standing on. I didn't reply in the chat. I tapped the settings icon, scrolled to the bottom of the page and clicked delete and exit. Then I called my personal assistant, Assistant Lynn. "Lynn," I said, setting the coffee cup down with a small clink against the marble counter. "The joint venture agreement with the Julian Group for the West Side Commercial Plaza, is it signed?" "No, Ms. Hayes." Lynn's voice was crisp. "The board approved the draft, but your father's signature is pending your final review." "Cancel it," I said. "Tell them we're re-evaluating our regional portfolio. And the shipping customs clearance for Lydia's family? The one we facilitate through our dock authority. We can delay the inspection permits by 45 days under the new Maritime Safety Code," Lynn said without a second of hesitation. She didn't ask why. She had worked for my father for 12 years before being assigned to me. She knew how the Hayes family cleared its garden. "Do that," I said. "And Lynn." "Yes, Ms. Hayes. Send a professional surveyor to Skyridge Peak. I want a full assessment of the commercial potential of the south face. If we build the luxury villa development we planned last year, we'll need to clear the access roads. That means the Blackwood family's private timber easement at the base will need to be revoked. I will have the legal notice served to Blackwood Logistics by noon," Lynn said. "Thank you." I hung up, took a sip of my coffee, and looked out at the garden. The frost was still clinging to the boxwood hedges. It was going to be a cold winter, but for the first time in my life, I felt perfectly warm. The Blackwood family was not poor, but their wealth was of the second tier, the kind that required constant maintenance, bank favors, and social invitations. They owned a logistics firm that operated 80 trucks and leased 3 warehouses near the harbor. The harbor, however, was owned by Hayes Marine Corporation. At 1 p.m., my father came home from his morning round of golf. He was 62, with a thick mane of silver hair and the broad, heavy shoulders of a man who had spent his youth working on the docks before he bought them. He was wearing his gray cashmere sweater and carrying a leather document tube. "The Blackwood boy is still standing outside our office downtown," my father said as he sat opposite me at the dining table. Maria set a plate of grilled salmon and asparagus in front of him. His father, Marcus, called me 3 times this morning. He sounded like his blood pressure was through the roof. "What did you tell him?" I asked, turning a page of my book. "I told him I don't handle my daughter's real estate holdings," my father said, taking a bite of the salmon. He chewed slowly, then wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. "But I did mention that if his son doesn't understand the boundaries of our family's property, we might have to reevaluate the lease on Warehouse 4. I smiled slightly. "Warehouse 4 is their main distribution hub." "I know," my father said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Marcus knows too." He was very apologetic. He said Ethan has been confused lately. He's sending the boy to the country house in Vermont for a few weeks to cool off. Ethan won't go, I said. He thinks if he stays here and looks miserable enough, I'll eventually feel guilty. He's used to me being the one who makes the peace. Well, my father said, reaching out to pat my hand, he's about to find out that peace is an expensive commodity when you have to buy it from the Hayes family. The phone on my counter rang at 3 p.m. It was an office line from Blackwood Logistics. I let it ring 5 times before I picked up. Scarlett. Ethan's father's voice came through, sounding strained, the background noise of truck engines and air brakes audible behind him. Scarlett. Sweetheart. It's Marcus. Hello, Uncle Marcus. I said, using the polite title I had used since I was 5. Scarlett, I don't know what's gotten into Ethan, the old man said, his voice cracking slightly. He came home this morning with his hands blue from the cold. He's been sitting in his room, refusing to talk to anyone. And then I get a call from your father's legal team about the timber easement at Skyridge. The easement was a courtesy, Uncle Marcus, I said, my voice gentle but firm. My father granted it to your company 15 years ago when we were neighbors. But we're restructuring the mountain's commercial assets now. We need the land. Scarlett, that easement saves us 40 miles of hauling on the northern route. If we lose it, our diesel costs will rise by 20%. I'm aware, I said. Is there no way to resolve this? Marcus pleaded. Ethan is young. He's stubborn. He's made some foolish choices with that Davis girl. But he loves you, Scarlett. You two have 23 years of history. We had 23 years, I corrected him. But Ethan decided that 23 years of history wasn't worth the trouble of a 5-minute drive. He wanted to teach me a lesson, Uncle Marcus. He wanted to see if I would crawl. Marcus was silent for a long moment. I could hear the heavy, rattling sigh of an old businessman who knew when he was holding a losing hand. He's my only son, Scarlett, he whispered. Then you should have taught him how to treat the daughter of the man who owns his warehouse, I said, and gently ended the call. 2 days later, I was sitting in the private lounge of the Royal Oak Country Club, waiting for my mother to finish her bridge tournament. The lounge was quiet, decorated in dark green velvet and polished oak. I was drinking an Earl Grey tea when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up. Chloe Davis was standing there. She was no longer wearing the short skirt or the thin cashmere coat. She was dressed in a beige tweed suit that looked remarkably like one of my old Chanel designs, though the cut was slightly off around the shoulders. Her eyes were still slightly pink, but she didn't look like she was on the verge of collapsing. She looked determined. Scarlett, she said, her voice dropping into that soft, breathless register. Can we talk? I didn't invite her to sit. I didn't even set my teacup down. About what? Chloe? About Ethan, she said, sitting down in the green velvet armchair opposite me. Anyway, she crossed her legs, her fingers clasping her designer purse, a brand new one I noticed, probably bought with the credit card Ethan had given her after her recovery. He hasn't eaten in 2 days, Chloe said, looking at me with a mixture of pity and accusation. His father is threatening to cut him off, and they're losing their contracts at the harbor. Do you really hate him that much? Just because of a little argument on the mountain? I don't hate him, I said, taking a slow sip of my tea. Hate requires an investment of emotional energy. I'm just indifferent. Chloe let out a soft, dry laugh. Indifferent? You closed an entire mountain. Scarlett, you used your family's money to crush his father's business. That's not indifference. That's a tantrum. If my family's money is a weapon, Chloe, I said, looking her dead in the eye, then Ethan was the one who handed me the target. He thought he was playing a game of chicken with a girl who had no choice but to blink. He forgot who built the road he was driving on. Chloe leaned forward, her sweet expression slipping for a fraction of a second, revealing the sharp, calculated ambition underneath. You think you're better than me because your dad owns the docks, she whispered. But Ethan doesn't love you, Scarlett. He never did. He stayed with you because your families were joined at the hip. When he's with me, he's the protector. He feels like a man. With you, he's just the boy who lives next door to the heiress. I set my teacup down. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. Is that what he told you? I asked. He didn't have to, she said, her chin rising. He showed it. He left you on that peak to stay with me in the clinic. He chose me. He chose a liability, I said. And now he's paying the premium. Tell me, Chloe, how long do you think Ethan's protection will last when he doesn't have the money to pay for your next Chanel suit? How long will you stay with a man who has to lease his warehouses from my father's estate on a month-to-month basis because he can't afford the annual deposit? Chloe's face went rigid. He has his own talent. He has 23 years of my family's goodwill, I said, standing up. I smoothed down the front of my skirt. And that asset has just been liquidated. Enjoy your tea, Chloe. I've already had the waiter put it on your tab. I walked out of the lounge, not looking back. As I reached the glass doors, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was an email from Assistant Lynn. Attachment: forensic_report_Skyridge_clinic_log.pdf. I opened the file as I walked toward my car. It was the medical log from the community clinic at the base of the mountain from New Year's Eve. Patient: Chloe Davis. Admittance time: 5:45 a.m. Diagnosis: mild fatigue. Core temperature: 36.8 degrees Celsius normal. No signs of hypothermia or physical collapse. Treatment: 1 bag of saline solution, requested by patient's mother, who is a registered nurse at the facility. Discharge time: 6:30 a.m. I looked at the report and let out a short, quiet laugh. She hadn't even been cold. She had simply walked into the clinic, where her mother worked, and ordered an 4 drip to make the performance look real. And Ethan had spent 6 hours standing in the frost, ruining his family's business. For a girl who was currently editing her Instagram photos in the waiting room. I forwarded the PDF to Ethan's personal email address with a short 2-word message: get well soon. For 48 hours, the digital world of our former friends remained dead. Silent. The group chat stayed deleted on my end, but Assistant Lynn kept me updated on the social ripples. It seemed the Peak Club had lost its peak. Lydia had tried to call our import office 3 times to salvage her wine distribution license, only to be told by a junior receptionist that Ms. Hayes is currently in a multi-day board meeting regarding structural realignments. On Thursday night, the city was hit by a late-season blizzard. The snow fell in thick, heavy sheets, blanketing the slate roofs of the Hayes estate in 3 feet of white. I sat in the library, the fireplace crackling, with birch logs, reading a translation of Italian architecture reports. My father was across the room, his glasses on his nose, looking over the harbor. Receipts. The Blackwood boy is at the gate again, my father said, not looking up from his ledger. The security guard on the night shift called the house. He's driving his old Jeep. He's been parked by our driveway since 7. I turned a page. It's below freezing. Yes, my father said. The guard wanted to know if he should clear him off. The snow plow needs to get through the main gates by midnight. Tell him to move the Jeep, I said. If he wants to stay, he can stand on the sidewalk. That's city property. You're a hard woman, Scarlett, my father said, but his voice was soft, carrying the pride of an old man who had watched his daughter grow the same iron in her bones that had kept his own business alive during the shipping crises of the 90s. I learned from the best, Dad, I said. At 11:30 p.m., the wind was howling through the chimney. I finished my tea, closed my book, and walked to the high French windows of the library that faced the long, winding driveway. Down by the heavy wrought iron gates, under the yellow glow of the street lamp, a lone figure was standing in the snow. He didn't have his Jeep anymore. The plow had likely forced him to park further down the public road. He was wearing his black winter coat, the collar turned up against the wind, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Even from this distance, I could see how thin he looked. The proud, confident posture of the boy who had told me, "You're too proud, it's time you learned a lesson," was gone, replaced by a slight, shivering slouch. My phone, resting on the side table, lit up. It was an unknown number, but I knew the digits by heart. He had bought a burner phone or was using a friend's. I picked it up and swiped to answer. Scarlett. His voice was cracked, the sound of the wind nearly drowning him out. I saw the report. The clinic log. I know, I said, looking through the glass at his small silhouette in the storm. She lied to me, he whispered. She told me she was in ICU. She told me her lungs were congested from the mountain air. I spent $40,000 on her medical bills and her family's rent because I thought I was the one who put her there. You were, I said. You put her there because you wanted to play the hero, Ethan. And heroes always have to pay for the dragon. I'm sorry, he gasped, and I could hear him shivering through the speaker. Scarlett, I'm so sorry. I've been an idiot. For 23 years you were the only one who never asked me for anything. You never asked for money, you never asked for gifts, you were just there. And I thought that meant you would always be there. That was your mistake, I said, my voice soft, almost lost in the crackle of the fireplace behind me. I was there because I loved you, Ethan. Not because I had to be. You confused my loyalty with a lifetime contract. I've broken up with her, he said, his voice rising desperate. I threw her things out of the apartment this morning. I told her if she ever came near my family or my office again, I'd have the lawyers prosecute her for fraud. Scarlett, please. Let me in. Just for 5 minutes. My hands. I can't feel my fingers. I looked at him under the yellow light. The snow was piling on his shoulders, turning him into a white, ghostly shape against the dark iron of our gates. 5 years ago, I said, when I got into that car in Zurich, my fingers were so cold I couldn't unzip my purse to find my hotel card. You told me that a little cold was good for the circulation. You told me it would make me appreciate the room more when I got there. Scarlett. I appreciate my room very much now, Ethan, I said. It's warm. The fire is built. And I don't have to share it with anyone who thinks my dignity is something to be bargained with. I hung up. I turned to the night guard's intercom on the wall. This is Scarlett Hayes. The vehicle and the individual outside the main gate are obstructing the snowplow. Please have the municipal towing service clear the area immediately. Yes, Miss Hayes, the guard replied. I walked back to my room, turned off the lamps, and went to bed. In the morning, the driveway was perfectly white, cleared of any tracks, as if the snow had simply washed the world clean of everything that had come before. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of black silk, white diamonds, and the heavy, sweet scent of gardenias. It was the annual charity gala for the Children's Hospital, the most prestigious social event of the winter season. Every family of note in the province was there, their tables arranged in a strict, unspoken hierarchy of wealth and influence. The Hayes family table was, as always, at the center of the first tier directly beneath the crystal chandelier. My father sat at the head, looking distinguished in his midnight blue tuxedo, while my mother chatted with the wife of the lieutenant governor. I sat on my father's right, wearing a backless gown of deep emerald silk, my hair pinned up, with a simple diamond barrette that had belonged to my grandmother. The room was loud with the hum of 300 conversations, but the moment the Blackwood family entered, a small ripple of quiet spread through the tables. Near the door, Marcus Blackwood looked 10 years older than he had 3 months ago. His tuxedo sat slightly loose on his shoulders, and his wife, Clara, was walking with her head down, her hand gripping her husband's arm with a tight, nervous intensity. Behind them came Ethan. He looked different. The easy, casual charm that had defined his youth was gone. His face was pale, his cheekbones sharp, and his eyes were dark and hollow as if he hadn't slept in weeks. He looked like a man who had spent the winter fighting a long, losing battle with his own choices. As they walked toward their table, which had been demoted to the third tier near the kitchen service doors, Ethan's eyes scanned the room. He found me. I didn't look away. I didn't smile, and I didn't frown. I simply looked at him, my hand resting on the stem of my champagne glass, as if he were just another piece of the hotel's elaborate molding. He stopped in the middle of the aisle. For a second, his mother pulled his sleeve, trying to guide him toward their table, but he gently shook her off. He walked toward our table. The silence grew wider, spreading from the third tier to the second, until the friends we used to share, Julian, Lydia, and the rest, were all watching with their forks suspended in midair. Ethan stopped 3 feet from our table. He bowed slightly to my father. Mr. Hayes, he said, his voice quiet but clear. Mrs. Hayes. My father set his water glass down. He didn't look angry, he looked calm with the cold, immovable dignity of a mountain. Ethan, he said, his voice carrying the weight of a former judge. I hope your father's transit issues have been resolved. We are working through them, sir, Ethan said. He then turned his gaze to me. Scarlett, he murmured. Mr. Blackwood. I replied, my voice smooth and formal. He flinched slightly at the title. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small, velvet-covered box. He didn't open it. He simply set it on the white linen tablecloth next to my plate. I found this in the old desk in my grandfather's study, he said. It's the original deed to the Northern Harbor parcel. The one your grandfather wanted 40 years ago. My father wanted me to give it to you as a token of our family's respect. I looked at the box, then back at him. The Northern Harbor parcel is underwater, Ethan, I said softly. The silt from the new shipping channel has filled it in. It has no commercial value anymore. I know, he said, his eyes shining with a sudden desperate wetness. But it's the only thing we have left that belongs to our history. I wanted you to have it, even if you throw it away. You should keep it, I said, gently pushing the box back toward his side of the table. Your family will need the collateral for the new warehouse leases. He stared at the box, his shoulders dropping. Scarlett, is there really nothing left? 23 years and we're just business partners who don't speak. I looked at him for a long, quiet moment. I thought about the little boy who had given me his piggy bank after breaking my doll. I thought about the teenager who had taught me how to drive on the mountain roads. And then I thought about the man who had stood on the observation deck, watching me walk into the freezing wind, telling me I needed to learn a lesson. The girl you left on the mountain, Ethan, I said, didn't have a jacket, didn't have a car, and she loved you enough to wait for you until the sunrise. I took a slow sip of my champagne. But the woman who came down by helicopter, She owns the peak. And she doesn't. Like the cold. Ethan stood there for a long time, the crystal chandelier casting long, glittering reflections across his pale face. He looked like he wanted to say something else, to scream, to beg, to make a scene that would force me to acknowledge him. But he saw the two security guards in black suits who had quietly stepped up to the edge of our table, their hands folded in front of them, their eyes fixed on his shoulders. He saw my father's calm, unblinking gaze. He saw my mother's polite, icy smile. And finally he saw me, calm, warm, and entirely out of his reach. He picked up the small velvet box, placed it back in his pocket, and bowed. Again. "Enjoy the evening, Miss Hayes," he whispered. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood," I said. He turned and walked back toward the third-tier tables, his shadow long and thin, against the polished dance floor. Chapter 6. The sunrise on the south face. 2 months later, the spring thaw had officially begun. The ice on the harbor was breaking into large, floating sheets that drifted out to sea, and the mountain roads of Skyridge Peak were finally clear of mud. I stood on the balcony of the new pavilion we had built on the south face. The air was fresh, smelling of wet pine and the first green shoots of mountain heather. Behind me, the construction crew was already working on the foundations for the new luxury villas, the ones that would bring $3 million in annual revenue to Hayes Industries. Assistant Lynn walked out onto the balcony, carrying a clipboard. "The Blackwood family has officially signed the new lease for Warehouse 4, she said, her voice crisp. They agreed to the 20% surcharge and the monthly inspection clauses." "Good," I said, not turning around. "And the timber easement?" "It has been fully revoked. Their trucks are now using the public highway. It adds 40 minutes to their route, but they've been on time for every delivery." "And Ethan?" Lynn paused. "He's still in Vermont, Miss Hayes. His father says he's working the logging camps. He hasn't been back to the city since the gala." I looked out at the horizon. The sun was rising, casting a warm, golden light across the peaks, turning the red clay slopes into ribbons of fire. It was beautiful. "Scarlett!" A voice called from inside the pavilion. I turned. My father was standing in the doorway, wearing his safety vest and holding a set of blueprints. "The engineers want to know if we should clear the pine grove on the east side for the tennis courts, or if we should leave it natural." I looked back at the mountains, the deep green of the pines, the sharp gray of the granite, and the wide, open sky that belonged entirely to me. "Leave it natural, Dad," I said, stepping back into the warm, bright room. "We have enough space."